I mean,
hello and welcome to this webinar. Today we're going to be introducing the LimaCharlie Query Language, or LCQL. My name is Christopher Luft. I'm one of the co-founders at LimaCharlie, and I'll be playing host. LCQL is a powerful new feature that opens up a whole new class of capabilities and really empowers users to operationalize the full year of telemetry that LimaCharlie retains by default. I'm excited to be presenting this to you today, and joining me to talk about all that's possible with this new feature is LimaCharlie founder and CEO Maxime Lamotte-Broussard. Hi, Max.
hey.
I appreciate everyone taking the time out of their busy day to be here with us. I know there are a lot of things competing for your attention, but we are really excited about this and are very glad that you're here. If any questions come up during the conversation, you can add them to the chat window of the specific platform you're watching this from. We will try and answer any questions as they come in, and we'll address any that we didn't get to at the end of the webinar. To get things started, I'm going to do a little Q&A with Maxime, and then he's going to take us through a demo. So here we go.
Sounds good.
So just to kind of give the people watching this a good high-level overview before we dive into the demo, can you just tell us what LCQL is and why we decided to build it?
Yeah. I mean, you kind of called it right from the get-go. So LCQL, LimaCharlie Query Language, what it is a layer on top of the data retention that's in LimaCharlie. There's kind of a few, if you know our replay feature, it's kind of very related to that. So the ability to run detection rules on historical data, except now really it's a layer that allows you to, in a more ad hoc, more like a Splunk or an ELK way of querying your data set. And it's the year that's in LimaCharlie. So the idea is we already had this data in the cloud. We're already kind of becoming the fabric for a lot of people for all of their telemetry from all kinds of different places. So now this is really opening it up so that we reduce the times when we reduce the number of times when you feel like you need to go and export, this data somewhere else in some other system to be able to query it.
And there's a couple different ways that users can leverage LCQL. Do you want to talk about those?
Yes. So we've actually had LCQL running in our command line interface, our CLI, that's built using the Python SDK. And so that's been out there for a few weeks now. And really what we're kind of really launching today is really the web interface for that. So we're just trying to make it really accessible. But fundamentally, the CLI version is still there. You're still going to be able to do it. It's very, very obviously close in kind of implementation. But sometimes, the command line interface is what you need. So it's always available.
Cool. So we can search all the way through up to the full year of telemetry for all the endpoints, which I imagine might be able to get expensive. So what are the costs of LCQL and how can users find out what that is before they go spend the money?
Yeah, absolutely. So, pardon me. So that's absolutely correct. So we are releasing LCQL in a usage mode, meaning that you pay for the query that you make, and I can dig into a little bit on that. If you know products like Google Cloud's BigQuery, it's very, very similar. So it is not like a base price. It's per query. The idea is that we're going to be refining that price. We're going to try to drive it down as much as we can. We might do things like, first block that's for free included or so that people can experiment a bit better. The idea is that is really to remove the base cost of, if you're running a Splunk, you're going to be paying a really big amount of money off the gate, whatever you do. Same thing, within the LK, you kind of have to go and provision all those machines. So now it's going to be really purely on demand. So if you don't do much, you're not going to pay much. If you want to do longer queries, you always can. And you're just going to pay linearly for that. The way that things are priced is they are based on the size of the query, and by size we mean the number of events that we have to scan over. So under the hood, we will go and apply your query. It's actually as a DNR. We'll see what that looks like, but we'll apply your query on historical data. So for every event that you scan, so that means the longer your query, the bigger the billable metric, as well as the wider the number of machines or sources of telemetry. Again, the bigger. So you can kind of narrow down and what you need. As you'll see in the demo kind of coming up is that number of what you're being billed, we can give you an estimate as well ahead of time, and it'll be displayed right there. It's always the worst case. So in most cases, you're going to get billed way less because we'll automatically paginate the data. So if you do a really big query that returns a ton of results by mistake, you're not going to be billed for like the whole 6 months you're querying. Instead, we're going to give you that first slice of results and only charge you for that slice. And then if you want to keep going, then you can scroll and keep going through the results. So
but we have a mechanism for users to basically estimate in a worst case scenario what that query is going to cost before they run it.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
And is LCQL included in the free tier?
Yes, actually, yes, that's a good point. Yeah, LCQL, you can play with it in a free tier, no problem. And yeah, just that easy.
Very cool. That's all the questions I have written down. I'm sure everybody's very excited to see this in action. So I'm going to hand the controls over to you and let you take us through the demo.
Sounds good. Cool. So what you're seeing now is the doc. So if you go to our documentation and you just search for LCQL, you're going to get our doc. It will cover the query language aspect of it, and it will also give you some tips around the CLI tool, how to interact with it. But one thing that you'll notice is that it's on purpose. The query language looks very similar to the DNR rule system in the sense that most of the operators are going to be there. So is not, contains, ends with, is tagged, is platform. So all kinds of things like that that you can use. And then you can do some basic projection. And again, we'll see what that looks like, but that means it's not just about selecting events and getting those rows back. But you can also do aggregation, grouping, counting, all that kind of stuff. So let's take a look, and there's a few examples as well, but let's take a look at a few examples on our side. So here is a query. You'll see that there's a couple of different components to the query, all split with a pipe, and it starts with a time frame. So that is, when do you want to look for things? So it will support either a single offset in time, so last 24 hours, or 2 dates, so that you can go at specific time. Second component is the sensors. So here you want to describe what sources of data are you interested in, what sensors. So in this case, and that is a sensor selector expression, or star. So star obviously is everything. Sensor selector, if you look into our documentation, you can use the tags, you can use the host name, you can use the platform. There's tons of different ways of selecting sensors. In this case, we're just saying, hey, where the platform is Windows. So all the Windows boxes. The next component are the events, right? So we're kind of slowly reducing our data set for our query. So what events are we interested in? So it could be star, or it could be, you could do like DNS request. Oh, I fat fingered it. Here we go. Anyway, you can have multiple events. In this specific example, we're just saying network connections. And the next step is the filter expression. So this is where we're going to say, what exactly are we looking for? So we'll start with something fairly simple, and then I'll show you some more complex examples. But this is like a logical, expression. So here, we're the events, we're just going to say network connection event. And the filter is where the file is signed value is 0. So that means where a network connection is being done by a process which is not signed. And finally, the last component is the projection, meaning, okay, we're going to be selecting all of those events now. By default, you could remove the entire last component, and that would just return to you the full events, the whole event rows. But sometimes you just want to be a bit more readable. And what you can do is you can say, you can define what it is out of those events that you want. So here we're saying, take the event file path and call it exe. So it's a little bit like SQL, if you've done SQL in the past. Then we're saying, take the network activity destination IP address as IP. And finally, we're saying, take the network activity port and call that port. Pretty straightforward. So let's hit enter. So we're going to be running this query for the last 24 hours. Here we go. So you can see that we got a bunch of results. You can also see that we got the cost estimate here at the top. Before we pressed enter, it validated our query and it provided a cost estimate for this query. But you can also see at the bottom here that what was actually charged is slightly different. So in this case, I think there's probably a bunch of events in the last couple of minutes that came through. But the idea is that if you do much larger queries, you will see that the amount charged will be usually under what you're querying for. So you get the results, pretty straightforward. Here's all the results. You can toggle the columns. So here I can, I only have 3 columns. So I'll show you a more detailed view what that looks like, but I could change my columns. I've got a couple of other things available. So the download. So this is a paginated query, so I'll only export fetched results. I could download the original, the selected fields as a CSV, or all fields as a CSV. So you'll see in a bigger, when you return all events, you can really select what you want. And finally, the start the DNR rule, and I will hop to that so you can see briefly what that looks like. So this is a really, really basic example, right, of this query, but we will generate you a DNR rule, so detection and response rule, that matches your query. What that means is that you can now use those queries to experiment. And then when you find the thing, what you're looking for, you can just click and essentially export that and create the DNR rule right away that you can use in production in an ongoing fashion. So let's look at a different example. So this one is different in that if you look at the projection, it will count events and it will group by domain. Because what we're doing, we're saying last 24 hours on Windows DNS requests, where the domain name contains .NET. And then we are grabbing the domain name as domain. We are counting the event as count, and we're grouping by domain. So if I perform this query, one thing that is important to note with the queries is that if you're doing aggregation, right, you're doing count, group by, all of those, your query will not be paginated. Essentially, if you do a query over 6 months, there's no way for us to kind of chunk over the results, because fundamentally, conceptually, if you're counting or you're grouping by something, we need to have all of the results. So here you can see the number of domain resolutions, on Windows boxes that we have for the various domains. Simple as that. Let's look at a different query, and this one let's modify this one a little bit. So instead of doing aggregation, let's just remove entirely the projection. So we're going to return everything. So here we're going to do this query. So now we're going to be getting all of the .NET DNS resolutions. Here we go. And what we will look at is the column selection. So you can see that we've flattened much of the event, so that it's just kind of one listing. If you click on this here, you can now select and expand different parts. So I could say, you know what, I don't care about this. I want the host name. And in the event, I will only select the CNAME and the domain name, because that's all I care about. So I'll just close this, and now we've just reshaped this to be exactly the fields you looked at. The advantage really comes in now. If you go in downloads, you could say, you know, save me a CSV of the selected fields only, and then we will give you that export. So it makes this super useful to kind of generate artifacts for you to then use as part of a report, or, you know, in something else to bring it somewhere else. Yeah, so that is sort of an overview of what it looks like here. Actually, this is a great example of a paginated query as well. So you can see, you know, the estimate is quite a bit higher than what we were actually charged, because we've just, you know, fetched an initial page. Cool. Yeah, that's essentially LimaCharlie in a nutshell. This is going to evolve over time. Very soon, we're going to be adding completion, so suggestion, as part of the query. So you won't even have to kind of know the field names. It's just going to pop in for you. So we will just keep adding a lot of usability, I guess, in that feature. Let us know what you think. Super exciting.
Awesome. Thanks for taking us through that, Maxime. And thanks to everybody who joined us today. It's a short but sweet one, and hopefully you can see why we're so excited about this new capability and all that it enables. I'm especially looking forward to seeing what everybody builds with it. There's always use cases that we never imagined, so I'm excited for that. If you have any questions, you can send them to info@limacharlie.io, and we encourage everybody to join our community Slack. There's often very good conversations going on around there, and we can answer questions in real time. So thanks again for taking time out of your day, and look forward to hearing from you. Cheers.